use that. All right, so those are the three things that we're going to get to. And I want to help you kind of paint a very broad picture real quick. Let's think about how we receive certain messages, right? All right, so we can think about that concept from receiving mail to receiving packages to receiving gifts, but we've got to think about now the bigger picture, right? So let's look at it from the standpoint of Saturday and Sunday, right? Our pastor, he pours out into us. So now what do we do as a ministry or as churchgoers, as believers, as visitors? What do we do as he is pouring into us? We now sit back and we are doing what? Receiving the message that he is putting out there. And after we receive either Saturday or Sunday, whatever service you attend, now Monday through Friday, guess what your job is? Usage. It's about how you use that message or what you receive. Now it's how you use it. So there are two important factors that we've got to begin to hone in on. One is our ability to receive, right? And like I said earlier, it's so easy for us to receive gifts, right? If I walk up to you and I say, "Hey man," or hey mom, what's up? I want to sow something into your life and I'm gonna put $100 in your hand. Oh man, that ability to receive that is so easy. You don't have to think twice about it. You don't have to consider it. It's like, oh, you said you wanted to give me a gift. Now I'm going to receive it right now. So we are readily able to practice that principle of being able to receive. And then you are able to show that you can use it because you go out and you spend that gift on whatever it is you wanted to spend it on. So those two principles in full effect. Now, when it comes to the word of God, are we able to put together the same level of discipline as far as our ability to receive and then how we go out and use what he called us to do, right? So when God gives us a message, now, are we able to receive it? Simple question. God pours something out into you. God puts something in your spirit. You may not like it. You may not agree with it, but are you able to fully receive what he said? And now the B part of that is to go out and act on what he called you to do. All right, so let's look at two texts really quick. Let's look at Genesis 22, and I'm going to break this up. I want to look at verses 1 through 3, and then we're going to look at verse 9 through 11. Genesis 22, verse 1 through 3, and 9 through 11. And I'm going to start with the NLT translation. It says, sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." Now, what just happened right there? Verse 2 was instruction that was given from God and Abraham's ability to receive. Right? So you have it right there. And God doesn't change. God is giving us the same principle. He gives us instruction, and now it's up to us to receive. So again, I'm going to pose this question all the way throughout. Are you receiving, number one, what God's calling you to do? And step two, are you acting out, or are you displaying the proper usage of what God called you to do? All right, so verse 3. Early the next morning, Abraham got up, saddled his donkey. He took with him two of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offerings, he set out for the place God had told him about. So now we saw instruction in verse 2. Verse 3, we saw action from Abraham to coincide with the instruction that he was given. So now I'm going to skip down to verse 9 through 11. And there's so much that we could get to in verses 4 through 8. But, for the lack of time today, we'll jump to verse 9. When they reached the place that God told him about, Abraham built an altar there. He arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac. You've got to think about that. For him to tie his son up, you've got to think about the level of trust. You've got to think about the level of discipline as far as carrying out an assignment, as far as carrying out instruction that you have been given. So now he's looking at his son in the face and he's tying him up, but he's understanding what's most important is my ability to follow the instruction that God has given me. And that's where we have to get to in 2021 and beyond, that it doesn't matter how difficult it may seem from a natural standpoint. We've got to be able to follow the course of action that God has laid out. He gave us instruction. We're here to follow. All right. So he laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Verse 10. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Now here we got action again. So we've got instruction in verse 2. And now we continue to see steps of corresponding action with Abraham following what God has now called him to do. Verse 11, but the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham, here I am. He replied, and we know how the verse goes, the ram in the bush. He didn't have to sacrifice his son. But what was happening? He was being tested to see, number one, did you receive what I sent you? As in God. God to Abraham, did you receive the message I gave you? Okay, you received it. Now, do you have the proper usage? Do you have the proper action to follow up with the message that I have given you? And I can tell you right now, there are so many areas where we are missing God, not because God isn't God. Not because God doesn't want us to do well, not because God doesn't want us to thrive in this world. We are missing it because there are two problems. Either we're not receiving the message, and there's no problem with the sender. The message is on the receiver, us, myself included. So there's either a problem on the receiving end or on our ability to carry out, to march out those instructions. All right, let's look at this really quick. I'll go to the second text, Psalms 32, verse 8 through 9. All right, Psalms 32. Verse 8 through 9. All right, verse 8. It says, I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. Now, here's that emphasis on the word instruct again. So God is saying, I'm going to give you instructions. So in this world, it's not on you to try to think or figure out how to navigate, how to get through this situation, how to figure out those circumstances, how to get around the issues at work. God says, that's not on you. I, as your God, am going to instruct you. I just need you to be able to what? Receive that instruction. So he says, I will instruct you and teach you. Not only will I give you the instruction, I'm going to show you, I'm going to be your tour guide to show you how to carry out step by step of what I've called you to do. So I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you. This is what I love. In emphasis, in parentheses, it says, I will counsel you who are willing to learn. There's where that part on our part has to come into play. Are we willing to learn? Are we willing to receive? It's so easy to get on our knees or lay in our bed or in our prayer closet at night, in the morning, midday, and pray to God and ask him for 1,000 different things. And when he starts to now deliver that package to you, are you ready to receive it? All right. I will counsel you who are willing to learn with my eye upon you. Verse 9, do not be like the horse or like the mule who have no understanding, whose trappings include a bridle and a rein to hold them in check. Otherwise, they will not come near you. So think about it. What he's saying is like the horse and the mule, they hear instruction, but they can't even receive it without some physical action to steer them in the right direction. God's not coming down to give you a physical action. He's not coming down to slap you and say, hey, that relationship's not the right relationship for you. He's not coming down to shake you and say, hey, that job offer that you just took, that's not the right job offer for you. He's saying, I need you to be able to hear me. I'm giving you instruction daily. Each time you wake up, there's a new day to receive a new word, to receive new instruction from God. So what happens? We've got to be able to carry it out. You've got to understand that God is drawing a strong line on our ability to hear instruction and put into motion. I promise you this, our setbacks, our failures, whether it's relationship, whether it's financial, whether it's on the job, the setbacks that we are seeing in our lives are happening because of those two things. Either number one, we are missing it when it comes to receiving the instruction, or B, we are missing it when it comes to carrying out the action or the proper usage of that instruction. So like, let's think about it from this standpoint, right? Like because I want to give you an example as far as like using things the proper way. And I was like racking my brain, like, like, let me get an example. So I thought about it, right? So when you think about a stove, right? Everybody, we got stoves, right? Whether you have the dual stove, the single stove, you got a stove, right? Now, here's the thing that so many of us miss. And I promise you, I really just learned this for myself. I remember running to my mom. I was like, Mom, do you know that this is what this is for? So that drawer at the bottom of the stove, so many of us use that is a storage drawer in so many of our houses, right? We have pots and pans, flat cooking sheets, all those things are in that storage drawer. But what is the appropriate use of that drawer? I wish we could do a survey to see how many people know. Like that drawer is a warming station, right? So when you cook, you don't have to keep your food in the oven. You sit it down in the warming station so you can continue to cook. What is the emphasis on? Being able to use that equipment properly. And I'm asking you today as I close, how many messages is God giving you? How many things is he dropping in your spirit that you are not using it the appropriate way that God called you to use it? Or first step, You didn't want to receive it because you didn't like it. Like a child, when you try to feed a child something that the child doesn't like, they're going to spit it out. They're going to let you know, I'm not a fan of this. And what I'm saying is, we don't have that option when it comes to God. We've got to trust that what God is giving us is for our benefit. It's to enhance our lives and it's to help us elevate. So our job, number one, is to receive the package, and number two, carry out the proper usage of it. Hey, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Of course, I'm GM3. Be blessed and have a great day.